Hare Krishna, So we'd like to welcome His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami Maharaj, who kindly found some time to give us a little sanga, his association, our small Russian sanga group. So let's welcome him. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you. Nice to be here. What better place to be on a Friday night? If only people knew this is the place to be on Friday night.
Lower East Side. Lower East Side.
Lower East Side, 26th Avenue. This is where it's all happening. Thank you. Nice to be here. And let's see what we can talk about this evening.
Yeah, excuse me, Maharaj, we have everything, all spontaneous. Mic is out of order. Bhagavad-gita has gone, disappeared, so whatever you can speak.
Yes.
Please make us cry in ecstasy or something.
Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Wow, that's a tall order. Nama Om Vishnu-padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanayana Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Well, let's start with my very few memories of preaching in former Soviet Union. First visit I made, first two visits I made were in 1978. The first visit was in an organized tour group. It was a 1-week guided tour. Leningrad. Remember Leningrad? And Moscow. This was from a tourist company in Switzerland. Myself and a devotee named Krishna, Dear Krishna Prabhu, who is now Bhakti Sudhir Goswami. And it was a completely organized tour, so theoretically we were supposed to always keep with the group, but we didn't. We just didn't. We just kind of left and did our own thing. And the tour guide didn't seem to mind, really. I remember our first night in Leningrad. We were put up in the Astoria Hotel. Quite nice hotel. And myself and my partner were put in a very large room very fancy room with a huge bathroom. I mean, the bathroom was itself like a room, like a bedroom. It was really big. And we became suspicious. We thought, they've put us in this room because this is where all the microphones are. They're spying on us. They're already suspicious. So first thing we did was search as thoroughly as best we could through the whole rooms, for a microphone. Of course, we didn't find anything. And then we kind of relaxed. We thought, oh, maybe it's not so bad as we were always hearing. Everyone's watching everyone. Maybe they're not really watching everyone. So we kind of relaxed. And we had contact with devotees. We would meet them there, and we met them in... Yeah, it was just the two places, Leningrad and Moscow. We had some private gatherings with them. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a... within the yatra at that time, we discovered very quickly that there were actually not one yatra, but two yatras, and that they were rather in tension with each other. And we had no idea what's the problem. The problem was apparently two different flavors of preaching Krishna consciousness, and we just kind of understood, we're in the land of where everything is intense. Whatever we do, it has to be intense. And this seemed to be the spirit there. One group was, it's like this, and the other group was, no, it's like this. It's got to be like this. No, it's got to be like this. And somehow we found ourselves between the two groups. We didn't know what to do, how to relate. Anyway, we related as best we could with everyone, encouraged as best we could. Yeah, it was a short visit. It was just for a week, and then we went back to Germany. And then dear Krishna thought, why don't we go again? This time we found out it's possible to get a visa for camping in Russia. And so we got a camping visa. And we drove. Now, the car that we had, in Russia you have this car called Lada, right? Well, they were also selling them in the West. I guess people were buying them because they were so cheap. They were horribly uncomfortable. I mean, they weren't really made for humans to sit in. But so for our preaching throughout East Europe, we were going through, or I should maybe say Central Europe. We were going through, we had been traveling through Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia, and Bulgaria. And where else is there? Yeah. So we would drive through all these with a Lada because we thought this will be very low profile. People won't, notice us so much. And so we drove, for this trip to Russia, we drove up from Germany, I guess it was from Frankfurt, Germany, up to Sweden, From Sweden we took a boat across to Finland. From Finland we drove into Russia. And we went first to Tallinn, and then Leningrad, and then we drove all the way to Moscow. And then we drove all the way from Moscow to Kiev. And we drove all the way from Kiev to Kishinev, and from Kishinev to Odessa, and from Odessa back through Romania all the way to Germany.
Wow.
I don't know how many thousands of kilometers. The car, I must say, the car did not break down. We broke down. But the car did not break down. It went the whole way. And we noticed, wherever we went, that we were being checked on the highway. They had these every 25 kilometers. They had a police checkpoint. They always had policeman standing near the highway watching traffic. And we noticed that every time when we would drive by one of these checkpoints, we'd look behind and we could see he would then go back into his little booth, probably to note that yes, they've passed our checkpoint, so they're on schedule. Because we had to be at a certain campsite every night of the whole trip, which was, it was 2 or 3 nights, 2 or 3 weeks altogether. And one time we were, after being in Moscow, we were driving out to head toward Kiev, and unintentionally we got on the wrong road, and very quickly we were stopped. Back that way. Okay. And in Kiev, we were a little bit, there was some chasing, a little bit of cops and robbers chasing the devotees and the police. And, we had a story in case the police came where we were, that we were rehearsing for a drama. That's why we have these clothes. And then we were in Odessa. We were in Odessa, and the place where we would have the flat, where we would be having a program, there was, I guess, no facility for cooking, so we were cooking in someone else's flat. You know, the usual things you would cook in those days: halava, sweet rice, I think we made, maybe. No, maybe not for that, but certainly halava and some cabbage, sabji, potatoes and cabbage, always. Cabbage, potatoes, cabbage. How do you say potato? Ziemniaki?
Kartoshka.
Katuszka.
Yeah. Kartoffel?
Yeah, katuszka. And cabbage?
Kapusta.
Kapusta also in Polish. Yeah, and I think Simply Wonderfuls was always a standard thing. So anyway, we're finished with cooking, and we're dressed in our plain clothes, and we have on hats, you know, and we're walking down some kind of main street, and we are with the pots to get to the other flat. And we're holding the pots, and we're standing at a stoplight waiting to cross the street. And from the other side of the street, we hear someone says, "Hari Bol." And this was 1978 in Odessa. And we're thinking we're looking very incognito, and someone across the street is saying, Haribol. Yeah, so that was going on.
Who was it?
We didn't see, we just heard, Haribol. My next time, and really only time since then, except for visiting Odessa last 2 years ago for the Bhakti Sangha, was our Gauranga Bhajan Band event in 1992, I think it was. Were any of you there?
Yeah, I've been there.
You were there?
In Kiev and Moscow.
Both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in Moscow, 10,000 people in the Olympiski.
Well, they told us in
Oh,
Kiev it
no,
was
yeah.
10,000.
Oh, in Kiev, right. In
And
Moscow.
in Moscow it was more like 35,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something. That was something. You want to describe what you experienced?
I know Harikesh Prabhu, he told me that in Kiev, I believe you brought some equipment, right? With you. I'm not sure.
Well, we brought
At least instruments.
some things, yeah.
There was not enough power
Uh,
in the big sport hall. I mean, not, it was Ukraine music hall.
Kiev, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
there was problem with it. But anyway,
But somehow we managed.
yeah, it's ecstatic. The whole city was in the saffron color. So many devotees came, all brahmacharis, everyone.
Everywhere you could see saffron.
Yeah,
Yeah,
invasion.
yeah. And then Moscow. It was a great anxiety because devotees had booked this big sports hall, which held, I believe they said it holds 23,000 people. And, what are we going to do? And there was very short time to advertise. So Harikesh sent Sri Ram to sort of emergency save the day, and somehow he mobilized the whole yatra, and I mean way over 23,000 people came.
Some devotees, they would go to the military bases or military kind of campuses and advertise there. So groups of soldiers actually come, dressed in uniform. They came to the concert. There were a lot of military people there.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's a lot of them.
So we had a whole army there.
Yeah.
All of them waving, chanting Hare Krishna. We were the first on the billing, but second was Boy George. And Boy George had become popular for his song, Bow Down Mister. And probably a good number of people were coming for him more than for us. But in any case, they were there when we were there. And so we did our whole thing, and Boy George also did his thing, and he was very nice. He wanted to play with us. He invited that we all join together. We sang Hare Krishna together. So it was actually a very joyful event. Yeah. Okay, those are my little escapades into, well, initially what was Soviet Union, and then by 1992 that was over, wasn't it?
89.
Yeah, by 89, so 1992 it was Russia. And I don't know, they told us, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but the plane that flew us from, we had 4 stops on that 92 tour. There was Riga,
Warsaw, I believe.
no, Warsaw was separate, but
or in Yugoslavia.
well, those were separate, but within former Soviet Union, we had Riga, Moscow,
Yeah.
Kiev, and one more, I forget, Tallinn maybe. Maybe it was Tallinn. And we had what they said was a chartered plane, and they said it was Premier Kosygin's personal plane.
Oh, Kosygin.
Remember him?
Yeah, old guy. They all look the same.
But it was set up inside the plane. It wasn't just seats like this. It was couches.
It's a government flight problem.
Yeah, it was nice with couches and nice comfortable chairs like that. It was a smaller plane, but it was still Aeroflot. And as you take off, you're kind of like, are you gonna make it?
Kind of flying ladder.
Yeah, it was like a flying. It felt a little bit like a flying ladder. That's a good way of putting it. Anyway, okay. Let's proceed. One thought I have. Let's start with Bhagavad-gita. I have.
Oh, you have copy.
Huh?
Yeah, you have a copy. Good.
Well, I have an electronic.
You always have a copy here. I don't know where it's gone. Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not coming yet, so
Gotcha.
It's okay.
Phone.
Here.
phone. The phone. You can use the phone too.
Хорошо, если копия.
I have a copy. I have this copy also. This is verses only. Let's see. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, a verse from 3rd chapter, which you may be familiar with. And this is a verse that includes the word chakra. You know this word, chakra, right? Okay, so it's, I find it interesting in different respects. I use it when I'm visiting China. I talk about this when talking with yoga people about the chakras in the body. And what I say is the Bhagavad-gita also talks about chakra. Okay, maybe not exactly in the tantric chakra system, but it's a good starting point. Evam pravartitam cakram.
Evam pravartitam cakram.
Evam pravartitam cakram.
Evam pravartitam cakram.
Nānuvartayatīha.
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 Aghāyur indriya-ārāmo.
Aghāyur indriya-ārāmo.
Aghāyur indriya-ārāmo.
Aghāyur indriya-ārāmo.
mogham pārtha sa jīvati.
mogham pārtha sa jīvati.
Mogham pārtha sa jīvati.
mogham pārtha sa jīvati.
I'm going to go to the translation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. That's okay. Translation, my dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. Purport, the mammonist philosophy. You know this word mammon?
Mammon.
Oh, mammon, yes. Mammon.
Like material.
Well,
Materialist.
attachment to wealth, yeah.
Yeah, materialism. The mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above-mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more by nature's life. This human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization. In either of the three ways, namely karma yoga, jnana yoga, or
Ashtanga.
bhakti yoga,
Oh.
there is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue, but those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above-mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at the particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if, by performing yajnas, one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not, therefore, limit one's progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. And so ends Prabhupada's purport. And now, this is kind of the final verse of a little series of verses, which is, you could say, starts with verse 10. Saha yagya prajashrishta purovacha prajapati anina prasavishad vameshavostvishta kamarup. The Prajapati, which Prabhupada, I think, identifies as Vishnu, can also be identified as Brahma. What does he do? Saha yagya, he, together with yagya prajashrishta, having created praja. What means praja?
Oh,
Progeny. Yeah, we have the English word progeny. Progenitor, progeny. Having created progeny together with yagya. Pura uvacha, long ago, said, Anina prasavishyadvam eshavu eshavaha ishtakamaduk. By this process of yajna, everything will come. Everything will be provided. You will be getting the kamaduk, which means the cow of desire, the wish-fulfilling cow. So there's a connection made between yajna, ritual, and wish-fulfilling cows. And then Krishna goes on to elaborate about the value of sacrifice and so on. And then verses 14 and 15, we just read 16. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanya anna sambhavat yagya bhavati parjanyo yagya karma samudbhava karma brahmodbhava vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavan. And then I always forget the third line. What's the third line?
Tasmat sarvagatam
Tasmat. Thank you. Tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yadye pratishtitam. It's telling this sort of cosmic chakra, which then he refers to with the word chakra in verse 16. And he's saying, what is yagya? It's a system, it's a cosmic system. And it has to do with anna, food. It starts with food being this source of subsistence for our bodies. And how do we get this food? We get it from rain. And how do we get rain? Well, from yajna. And what's yajna coming from? It's coming from karma, here translated as prescribed duties. And then it goes on from there to say, regulated activities, karma brahmodbhavan vidhi, are, you vidhi, know that it arises, udbhava, from is prescribed by the Vedas. Here Brahma means Vedas, udbhava. And then Brahma akshara, the aksharas means the syllables. Akshara, literally that which is not broken, or you can say unbreakable. It's the minimal sound of the language. It's the irreducible part of its sound. So the aksharas of Sanskrit, of the Vedas, the syllables of the Vedas, Brahmakshara samudbhavan, come from the Lord. Akshara also means the supreme Brahman. Brahman is also that which is unbroken. And I find it interesting that the word Brahman comes from the root Brahman. You know? B, R with a dot, M with a dot, H, Brahman. I don't know how you pronounce it. But it means to expand, to grow. So the absolute, the supreme, the ultimate is not something static, it's ecstatic. And this ecstasy of Brahman is, of course, Brahman is just one aspect of the absolute Param Brahman. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shamyate. There's three ways of expressing. And Bhagavan is the one we're interested in. And I've been thinking about this word Bhagavan because some devotees, there's a kind of revival of the Bhaktivedanta Institute going on in Gainesville, and they're calling it the Bhaktivedanta Institute of Higher Studies, I think, IHS, right? Mm-hmm. And they're still struggling with their mission statement or their vision or something. And they're looking at this phrase that Prabhupada gave, translating, what is it, Bhagavad-tattva Vijnanam? Scientific knowledge of the absolute truth. And they're trying to find a different way of expressing Bhagavad Tattva, because absolute truth for most people today will not be something they're going to jump up and down with ecstasy about. It just sounds too much. So I haven't come up with a solution, but I was thinking, what is Bhagavan? Possessor of Bhaga. And Bhaga generally is understood as meaning shares. When you cut up a pie or a cake, you have shares of that cake. And Bhagavan is the possessor of shares. But that doesn't really get at the spirit of it, does it? It just doesn't really, we say in English, doesn't cut the mustard. And I was thinking about how it's, because it's Bhagavan, it's also Brahman, it's something also about the idea of plenitude. Plenitude. You know what plenitude is? No. You know the word plenty.
Yes.
When there's plenty of something, it means there's really no lack of it. And you could say the abstract noun of that is plenitude. Okay, I don't know where to take that, because then you still have tattva to deal with. The truth of plenitude. No. Scientific knowledge of the truth of the categories. I understand the word tattva can also mean categories. Categorical categories. Anyway, so where was I? Bhagavan, yes. Bhagavan is, of course, the form of the Lord, of the Absolute that we're interested in. And Prabhupada in his word for word says, Akshara, from the Supreme Brahman, then in parentheses, personality of Godhead. Prabhupada takes any opportunity to say it's about person. Samudbhavan, directly manifests from. Tasmat, therefore, sarvagatam brahma nityam yajñe pratishtitam. Therefore, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. Okay, so this sets up this idea. There's this cosmic process that goes on, and it's really a good thing because it's what it keeps everything going. And Saha Yagya Prajashvishva, it's the Kamaduk. It's what's going to fulfill everyone's desire. And then, after this, what does Krishna say? Evam pravartitam cakram. Na anuvartayati. Someone who doesn't follow it is agha-āyuḥ, indriya-ārāmaḥ, someone who's just living their lives to enjoy the senses. Mogham partha sa jīvati. Sa jīvati, his life, he lives mogham, uselessly. Friday night in Lower East Side, New York. What's going on most of the places, except a few. Mogham. Mogham jīvati. But that's all kind of depressing, and we don't want to get depressed tonight, do we? Rather, it's Friday night, and so I was thinking, we can think about how the Lord is engaged in sacrifice and facilitating sacrifice. And the sort of paradigmatic case of this, it seems to me, what I find so significant in the Bhagavatam is the story of the Lord engaging the devas and the asuras in the churning of the ocean, of the is it an ocean of milk? It's a lot of milk. In any case, it's the cosmic ocean that they're churning, and this churning is something we can think about a little bit in different ways, especially considering that this is also the month of Damodara. And what else do we know about churning of milk in relation to Damodara? You might think about what Mother Yashoda does. Mother Yashoda, what does she do? She churns milk. Do you know, has anybody do you have experience churning to make butter?
Every week.
You do it every week? Wow.
Yogurt.
Oh. Wow, for the restaurant? Yeah, that's the better way to make ghee, isn't it?
Yeah.
You make yogurt, and then from the yogurt you make ghee. I heard about that in India. But to make butter from churning, I looked it up on Wikipedia Uvacha. So the molecules of the milk fats are kind of enclosed in what are called phospholipids. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
And the phospholipids keep it from congealing. And so the process of churning agitates and breaks up those phospholipids and opens it up so that the milk fats can congeal with each other. And then eventually you have butter. However, I have to say, what you all most of the time probably experience as butter, what we get in the factory, that sort of hard butter, that is not butter. The butter, the real thing, I experienced once. Years ago I was in Jaipur with His Holiness Indriya-ārāmaḥ Swami and a few of his students, and we were staying with one businessman, gentleman, and he had us come to his shop, and he served us breakfast, and the breakfast consisted of fresh butter, which was very white and very soft and so sweet. We had fresh butter and jalebis for breakfast. Hot jalebis and fresh butter. Yeah, so anyway, fresh butter. This is the butter that Damodara was after. This is what he was interested in. Yeah. And this was what, of course, Mother Yashoda was preparing and was storing. And so here we have this interesting exchange that goes on between Damodara, who comes to be called Damodara. Why? Because he gets eventually punished for his mischief. There are a lot of things, of course, different aspects of this pastime one can meditate on. The idea of God's being mischievous I find interesting. What to understand, how to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead is mischievous. God is a troublemaker. But as we know from this pastime, the trouble that he makes is all for the purpose of increasing bhakti. And the bhakti, you can say in one sense, the yogurt, the milk products, the butter in particular, is a kind of medium of carrying, a medium for, like a vehicle for carrying bhakti. And if you think about it, this is what is going on when we make a devotional offering of food to Krishna. We are gathering ingredients. Of course, ideally we would be gathering ingredients which we are growing on our own farm. This can be a nice meditation. Here you are in the midst of the big city, right? And what do? We're like everyone else. We're living a life which is quite complex. And how we acquire food, we have something called money, and we go to a place called a shop, supermarket, or some sort of shop, and somehow with this money we pay and we get something, we just take it home. Very simple. And we take that as that's normal. I always remember reading years ago, you may know from history that in the early 1960s, in the political situation, the early stages of what came to be called the Cold War between Soviet Union and the West, there was an attempt by the Soviet Union to cut off West Berlin and thus to force it to become part of the Eastern Bloc. So the West, of course, they weren't going to let that happen, so they did what was called an airlift of supplies over a period, I think it went for 3 weeks. Is that possible? Maybe longer. So they were flying in because they couldn't truck in any supplies, so everything was being flown in from the West. And the point I want to make is that it was calculated if they would not do this, the people in the city would only survive for 4 days. So that's probably similarly applicable to any other city. If you cut off the supply from outside, how long can you last? So we kind of take for granted that we're getting food and it's being supplied. What we forget is where we tend to forget where it's coming from. We may also be forgetting that the climatic conditions under which everything is being grown are being quite radically disturbed in much of the world today. It's becoming more and more of a challenge for farmers to grow what they grow because of unpredictable or changing climate patterns, as they say. Okay, so back to bhakti. Patram pushvam palam toyam yome bhakta. Bhaktya prayachati. Bhaktya means by bhakti. Tadaham bhakti uparitam ashnami. I will accept it, Krishna says, if it's offered with devotion. So, but he doesn't say just offer me devotion. He says offer me a leaf, a fruit, a flower, or water with devotion. So he doesn't just say, offer me your devotion. He says, offer me a leaf, fruit, flower, or water. And then I will accept. He doesn't say, I'll accept your devotion. He says, I'll accept your leaf, fruit, flower, or water. And then, because he's accepting the leaf, fruit, flower, and it can be and. Because he's accepting it, then we understand that becomes prasada. And so the cycle, we're getting back to this word chakra, that there's a completion of the cycle of sacrifice. Yagya sishtashina santo muchante sarvakil vishai. Bunjate te tvakam papam ye bhajantyatma karana. That's earlier, also in this, or later, earlier in this chapter. The santas, the sadhus, the sages, what do? They take the remnants of food which is offered in sacrifice. We know all this. But the point is that because it's a vehicle of bhakti, and that's why for us, especially in this age, yajna comes in this form. It's a means of carrying, of conveying, of communicating bhakti. So anyway, Damodara, what does he do? He takes the very devotionally made butter of Mother Yashoda, and what does he do with it? He eats it, but he also distributes it. And who does he distribute it to? The monkeys. Yeah. How many of you have been in Vrindavan? So you know about monkeys in Vrindavan. Nobody goes out and says, "Oh, monkeys, here, take some butter." But Krishna does. Krishna is having fun distributing to his friends, the monkeys. And all of this mischief is causing disturbance. Now, I want to go back to the devas and the asuras, and what are they doing? What are they trying to churn? Amrita. And what is Amrita?
Life.
Yes, or nectar of
I think immortality.
immortality. Yes, because the word mrita means death, means literally dead. And amrita would mean the opposite of that. So they're eager for this, that which gives unending life. And so for that reason, because they're both interested in the same thing, they agree to cooperate. They have a common interest, and so they can cooperate, even though, you know, one side is kind of the opposite of the other side. There's an interesting, by the way, sort of tantric interpretation of this pastime, you know, where the Mount, is it Sumeru, made the pivot, is representative of the spinal column. And there's other parallels. The Vasuki is wrapped around 3.5 times, according to some, I don't know if that's in the Bhagavad-gita. And that is connected with the idea of the kundalini at the base of the spine, which is identified like a snake, which is coiled 3.5 times. And then the process of churning is awakening the kundalini and is bringing out the amrita, which is then by a connection with the, Sahasradhara, something like that. But here the point is that in the Bhagavatam you have devas. Devas are all about following dharma, and the asuras are supposedly the opposite. They're about adharma, although it's more complicated than that, because the asuras, sometimes they follow dharma in order to get powerful. They perform yajna, and they become more powerful than the devas sometimes. So you get this tension, and this is why Vishnu says, hey, why don't you guys work together for a change? Keep yourselves out of trouble, you can work together. And so they do this. And in any case, the principle that they're concerned about is very much in relation to dharma. And dharma is very much about what? It's about sort of keeping status quo, you can say. It's about keeping, dharma is about sustaining, to uphold, to sustain. So they want to sustain the status quo of righteousness, if you like. So that's what's going on in that churning pastime. And let's see what do we understand if we compare that with Damodara and the churning and the milk and the butter what's going on there. In one sense, it's just the opposite. Instead of getting order, which is what the devas and the asuras want from their churning in Amrita, what does Krishna do? He makes a mess. And what is this mess? This is the messiness of bhakti. Bhakti is messy. So, welcome to the Hare Krishna messy movement. If you came to the Hare Krishna movement expecting everything to be nice and orderly, so sorry.
And on time.
Wrong place.
And on time.
And on time, yes. You're in the wrong place.
Someone told me that in some of writings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he writes that Vaishnavas are well known everywhere for being always late.
Really, even
Yeah.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So it really is tradition.
They're just following
Yeah, we shouldn't disturb the tradition. We should follow this very carefully. Yeah, so so in the prayer of the Damodara Namam Ishvaram Sachitananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Vrajamanam Yashadaviolu Kalat Davamanam Paramrishtam Atyantato Druptagopya. In the beginning of that verse, it's all about Ishvaram Sachitananda Rupam. It's kind of this formal, I offer all respects, and it's all very, it's almost like awe and reverence, and so on. But then Lasat Kundalam Gokule Vrajamanam, the Lord, He has these swinging bright kundalas, and you already know from this that there's going to be something going on. Something's shaking. Then comes the big surprise. Yashoda Bia Ukalat, out of fear. This Sachitananda Rupam Ishvaram is Davamanam, he's running. So now we have something very strange. We have something that doesn't really make any sense at all. We have the supreme, powerful personality of Godhead, and he's running in fear. And he's running because of Mother Yashoda, and of course, in the rest of the prayer we hear that it's really that she is binding him with her love. And that binding Krishna with his love, with her love, reminds us that this is what we are after. We want to bind Krishna with our love. And we want to keep Krishna. We don't want to let him go. Mother Yashoda did something really terrible. She bound Krishna with a rope. Now, I don't know about you, but I think if someone is tying up if a mother is tying up her small child with a rope, that starts to look like child abuse. Isn't it? But maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe in those days in India, that's what you do with a child when the child is mischievous. You tie him up to a uluka. But of course, the tying up of Krishna is no ordinary tying up, because Krishna is allowing himself to be tied up. And so it is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur tells us the solution to a problem which plagued the European theologians, and more than that, for ages. Is it faith or is it works by which we are saved? This became a major issue. The challenge of the Protestantism was questioning the idea that by doing works, by doing actions that are somehow approved by the church as good actions, that will save you. So the Protestants said, we're questioning that. They were saying, what is our pathetic effort going to do in the face of the absolute goodness of God. We are so fallen. What could we possibly do that would give the slightest impression to God that He should therefore save us? That's kind of the reason. And so they questioned that, and they said we're not being saved by our so-called good works, we're being saved only by our faith. But then to say only by faith, so that means we just kind of sit around and say, I believe, I believe, I believe. That didn't sound very persuasive either. And so it's gone back and forth, and it was the cause of a lot of bloodshed in Europe. Yeah. It's all more complicated than I indicate, but this was one of the this was a major theological issue for Europeans. And you could say that the Indian version of this came expressed in this pastime in which Mother Yashoda found that her rope was always 2 fingers too short. 2 fingers too short. Every time she'd add a new rope and try to bind Krishna, it would still be 2 fingers short. 2 fingers short. More rope, always 2 fingers rope. 2 fingers too short. And what were the 2 fingers? This is where Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains. 1 finger symbolizes or represents the effort of Mother Yashoda. You can say the works of Mother Yashoda. And the other finger represents Krishna's grace. Mother Yashoda was making all this effort, she was perspiring, and at one point she was kind of, what's going on? And then Krishna, okay, she's making effort, let me help. And so what we understand from this is it's a combination of both. Why does it have to be one or the other? It's a happy combination of both. The controversy also was there in the Vaishnava tradition, as you may know, amongst the Sri Vaishnavas, going back to the 17th century. There were 2 parties, the Vadagalais and the Tengalais. The Vadagalais were the northern, and the Tengalais were the southern Vaishnavas. The Vadagalais were based in Kanchipur, and the Tengalais were based in Srirangam. And the Vadagalais said they were the more, you can say, it's about works. You have to chant the mantras properly, you have to do all the rituals properly, you have to learn Sanskrit, and so on and so forth. And the Tengalais said, no. They said, Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, sarva dharman parityaja. Give up all this, your rituals. Mam ekam sharanam vraja. And so they referred to this as sharanagati or prapatti. They also used the term just surrender. But then, again, the question came, well, what does that mean? Just, okay, now I believe, now I surrender. What is that? So then you get this elaboration on what is sharanagati. Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjanam, rakshishyatiti vishvasa, bhoktritve varanam tata, atmanikshepa karpanye, satvidha sharanagati. There's 6 vidhas, 6 aspects of sharanagati. Accepting what's favorable, rejecting what's not favorable, rakshishyati iti, and saying, He will save me, He will protect me. In other words, having that faith, vishvasa, bhoktritve varanam, and having also the faith, the Lord will support me, will care for me. Atmanikshepa, surrender, giving oneself to the Lord, and karpanya, being humble. All of these together, sharanagati. The southern group said, this is what we do. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a songbook called Sharanagati. And in that songbook, he gives several songs for each of the 6 items. And he starts the 6 categories not with anukulyasisa, not with what's favorable. He starts with humility. And he works eventually, I think in the end, he has what's favorable, what's unfavorable. With each of these 6 items, he has usually 4 songs. And if you look at those songs, you'll see they are progressively more, they're progressively deeper, and you can say more and more approaching Braja Vrindavan Bhakti within each category. It's very interesting how he's structured. And then at the end of that song book, after the 6, then he gives 13 songs, Lala Samayi maybe, longing for the Lord's mercy. And then the very last song, he's describing this incredible state of utter and complete and overwhelming ecstasy in chanting the holy name that he is experiencing. So he starts out, the very first song of the Sharanagati is, I am so fallen, I have been wasting my life, I am telling my story now, how wretched I am. And then by the end of it, he's just in utter ecstasy. So it's a nice cycle of songs, if I may say, getting back to our theme of cycles. Yeah, what other cycles we may experience? Bicycles, no. Different kinds of circles are existing in our lives. And there's also our linear, in the churning, there's sort of linear motion and circular motion, both. It's interesting. Hare Krishna, these are a few odds and ends of some thoughts about, Damodara and related subjects. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation of this topic. Since you have chosen the topic of the sacrifice yagya, I've been wondering for quite a while. Vedic sacrifice is a very important part of the spiritual life. And as you mentioned that there is connection with the demigods, we have received rains because of the rains are coming because of the yagya. Why is that? Even in Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm reading right now, 2nd canto, why is it that it doesn't, the sacrifice is not based on the principle of worship of the Supreme Lord Vishnu only, but also it involves a lot of demigods. Mm-hmm. So then every demigod is supposed to receive own share in homa, to make it more clear, my question is why it's not that, why even Srimad Bhagavatam in some parts doesn't state that, just worship Lord Vishnu or Krishna, and then all the demigods as the limbs of his Virat Rup, they will get satisfied and then you will receive everything. Why still there is a demigod worship in Yagya principle?
Right. Well, my sense is, from my reading of the Bhagavatam, it's being very inclusive in the way it's encouraging everyone from wherever they stand, so to say, to go in the right direction, the right spiritual direction. And so, in that sense, the Bhagavatam is quite realistic. It's recognizing people are in all sorts of levels of understanding, and whatever level they're on, and we get hints of this in the Bhagavad-gita also, wherever you are, you can progress from there without any big shock. Krishna is not going to scare people away. Of course, then that's second canto, and then you come eventually to 10th canto, where Krishna is going to, in his very charming way, say to his father, "Why are we offering this yagya to Indra? Why don't we just worship Govardhan?" And because by this time we've progressed through second canto, and then the fourth canto we hear about Daksha and his yagya, and what a mess that yagya became. And then by the end of the fourth canto we're hearing about Narada urging Prachinavarhi to really give up all that yagya he's doing, especially because he's killing animals. And anyway, we get eventually to the 10th canto, and then we're ready to hear, by then you can say, to hear Krishna say, don't bother with Indra. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you mentioned Bhaktivinoda Thakur in this famous essay that he wrote on the Bhagavatam said, in one sense, all of Vedic literature is brought together in the Bhagavatam, so that there's no need to carry around all the Vedic literature. It's taking what is essential from everything and giving us that, all in one book. And so it's not rejecting anything. It's not rejecting worship of the devas, because it's Vedic, and what's Vedic is somehow honored, it's preserved. It's okay if you're worshipping the Veda, worshipping devas. You can do that. We see that in the Manu Samhita. I spent a bit of time looking at chapter 5 of the Manu Samhita, because there's a series of about 50 verses dealing with forbidden and permitted foods, and then with whether or not it is permitted to eat meat. And then eventually, by the end, it says, in effect, don't eat meat. But it doesn't say that in the beginning. It says, go ahead, you can eat this, this, and this. And this is, it's dharma. But then it's dharma if you do it in sacrifice. And then there's one verse which is kind of shocking. It says in one verse that if you are the priest of a sacrifice in which animals are sacrificed, and if you refuse to eat the meat that is prescribed for you in the sacrifice, you will suffer, what does it say, 21 births or something in hell, something like that. And the explanation for that is that the priest is doing, it's, how to put it, it's, each person in the sacrifice has a special job to do. And the priest's job in such a sacrifice where animals are sacrificed, he has to eat the meat on behalf of the yajamana, the sponsor of the sacrifice. Figure that out. So that's all Vedic, and the point is that it's all there in the Manu Samhita, because the Manu Samhita wants to say, yes, you want to follow that, you can do it, this is how to do it, but actually it's better if you don't. It's better if you don't do this. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Translation.
Примите нашу благодарность за то, что вы нашли время нам петь сюда. Нам очень повезло, что мы возможность соприкоснуться с истоками проповеди сразу после ухода в Широту, в Россию, по всему миру.
Parajit Prabhu wants to express the gratitude that you found some time to spend with us and to enlighten us with the some original stories and the roots of the preaching in the former Soviet Union. He's from Leningrad.
I was in St. Petersburg in
Yeah.
1978.
Oh.
I graduated from the college in this time. Yeah. Okay. Мой вопрос. Ученики Прабхупады, они создали ученики Прабхупады создавали храмы, создавали сельхозобщины, печатали книги. С тех пор мы только пользовались этим.
This is kind of long question. I will do it in parts.
Uh-oh. Long, complicated question.
Yeah. So the beginning is that the Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they did like the major work. They opened up the temples, built the temples, opened up and created the Ram, yeah. The communities like Vrindavan, like Nagari, and so on. So
Kniga.
Kniga, yeah. They
made the books.
They made the books, they published the books, and actually they built the basis for the movement.
Мы 50 лет только этим пользуемся, нам не удалось ничего создать. Был вопрос, могли бы вы сказать нам перспективы современного поколения, сможет ли современное поколение воровать, как Кришна, свежевыпитое масло, или они будут продолжать покупать это в магазинах?
Окей, все о своем. Okay, so,
Мы только пользовались.
Yeah. We just kind of
50 лет.
we just use whatever was founded by the previous, like the senior disciples of Prabhupada. And the question is that we didn't create anything of our own, and what are perspectives for us in
New generation.
and our new generation about those products. I mean, we don't really create our own produce, like, you know.
Дословно переводить, что я сказал, дословно. Сможем ли мы, как Кришна, воровать свежевыбитое масло?
Okay, the question
Новое
is that,
поколение.
can we steal the butter like Krishna does?
Well,
Fresh butter.
we can't
Fresh
really
butter.
we can't really imitate Krishna, can we?
No. No.
But we have to go on with the churning process of we churn the nectar of krishna-ksetra. You can say that's a kind of churning process. And so we can't imitate Krishna to steal butter, but we can, so to say, make butter. We can make butter to offer to Krishna, and then Krishna will steal it.
Вопрос, мы сможем это делать, или мы будем продолжать покупать его в магазинах?
На чем акцент? На том, чтобы воровать?
Нет,
делать?
Акцент на том, сможет ли новое поколение продвинуться дальше, вперед, и
Покупая
самому делать, чтобы самому делать масло.
Can we go on with the butter that we buy from
Как
the
он
stores?
видит перспективу нового поколения?
Can we survive buying that butter from the stores? That's the question, actually.
Or will we have a community that will provide those butter? Instead of buying it.
Ultimately, we would come to that point that we can really make such butter of Krishna's quality.
Yeah. Well,
He takes care of cows too.
you take care of cows?
Yes. No. I did the 15 years. I didn't see no progress
Yeah.
for this.
Well,
Nobody
we're
wants
working.
to take care of the cow. Nobody wants to learn how they take care of the cow.
Yeah, I know can be very discouraging.
Yeah.
So, but you may like to know that just a few days ago was a gathering in New Vrindavan with Kalakanta Prabhu. He organized he's the minister for agriculture and cow protection, and he's been very, very energetically trying to to stir up attention to this exact point, this concern. On all continents, he's been traveling the world making these conferences. And at this conference, at the end, he said to me, it's starting to go somewhere. Devotees are starting to, pay attention more. More devotees are starting to come to these. And he's very, very hopeful. We had devotees all the way from Australia coming. And so It's not easy, but it's not a lost cause, put it that way. And so, yeah, it's good if you can share your experience. Sometime you can also come when the next conference happens, probably again at New Vrindavan. You could come. And,
Yeah, he was in Russia. Yeah, I listened to his presentation
Yes.
in Omsk. In Omsk, I listened.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
he's Russia, he's going to Africa, South America, everywhere he's going.
May I add to the question? From your point of view, does it really look like so hopeless with our new generations that we don't really create, like, not we, but like, generally, like devotees, new devotees don't really create anything compared to their first generation?
Does it look so hopeless? No, it doesn't look so hopeless. And at the same time, I think the challenge is, how do we feel a sense of urgency that we all had in the early days? There was a real sense of urgency that maybe we are missing today. How to get that sense of urgency is the interesting challenge. And I guess one thing that can help is to look at and be aware of the spirit in which preaching has been done in the past. I've just been reading Prabhupada's diary of his time here in New York, his 1966 diary. I think we're up to March, so it was before he got this place. He's all alone. He's recording every day the time of sunrise, sunset, and moonrise or moonset. He's recording when he gets a letter from someone. He's recording when he writes a letter to someone. He's recording when he buys butter, spends 30 cents, and 25 cents for the bus, and he's recording when he gets $1 donation, and he's recording when he has neither expenses nor income. He records no expenses, no income. So it's all, when you look at that, you think, how hopeless that may have looked at the time. And yet, he was just plodding along, doing his best. Sometimes he reports that a couple of people come. He has a little evening gathering, maybe 2 people come. And one time he reports having visited Dr. Mishra, and apparently Dr. Mishra had said something not appropriate about tilak and kantimala. And Prabhupada says, Dr. Mishra was very offensive today about tilak and kantimala. And he says, what does he say? Something like, what is going to happen to him? Yeah. But he's, if we, in retrospect, if we look back and see, at that time, he's all alone, he really has nothing, and still he has that some amazing faith. So if we could imbibe just some fraction of that faith, how far this would take us.
But why is this sense of emergency that wasn't before? Like, it's a mode of Srila Prabhupada. Like, even like my husband was telling Ksheshwar Prabhu that they had it it was like long after Srila Prabhupada. They had it
In Russia.
in Ukraine and all over in Russia. But why now? Like I hear devotees saying like, oh, maybe not in this life, maybe next life. Nobody cares it. Like not cares. Nobody is like believes that they can get to Krishna in this life. So why it got lost?
What happened?
What happened?
Well, I don't know if analyzing will solve the problem. Maybe we just have to utishta. This is what Krishna tells Arjuna. Stand up. Just stand up. Do it. Yeah, I think we need to keep moving. We need to keep moving. It's the Hare Krishna movement. We have to keep moving. We have to be always looking what can we do better? What can we do more? What can we do with more enthusiasm? How can we attract more people? How can we ourselves be inspired? How can we something we have now? How can we make the most of what we have? If we don't, as they say, if you don't use it, you lose it. We have to use what we have, otherwise we may lose it.
Please don't think that we are all so pessimistic.
Don't we?
I hope not. Okay, I think I'll make a move because I have to travel tomorrow. So I'll say thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Antakoti Vaishnava ki jai. New York Yatra ki jai. Ruski Yatra New York ki jai. Gaur Premanande.
His Holiness Krishna